Hi Year 1. So we're going to do a 2-week project where we're going to recreate the front cover of Alexis Deacon's Beegu book. So the idea is we're going to make a background today and then we're going to do typography and our character next week. So step 1 is going to be creating this background. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need a piece of paper and I need to mark out kind of where the horizon line is, and in this front cover it's kind of quite low down, so about, if you've got a piece of paper that's roughly kind of a A4-ish, you want to maybe go up 3 finger spaces and fill in your line to show where the horizon of the buildings begins. Now the next thing I'm going to do is use watercolours. So I'm going to recommend that if you've got some paper that's slightly thicker than printer paper, you use that. And if you just have printer paper, that will work fine. But as you know, watercolours can kind of make the paper a bit soggy and it can get ripped. So I'm going to recommend if you have something slightly thicker that you use that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a go at making a gradient on my paper. A gradient just means it goes from either lighter to darker or darker to lighter. Now, on the front cover, it's nighttime and there's some stars twinkling in a night sky. Now, lots of children tend to think that a night sky should be completely black, but actually a night sky has loads of different colours, and one of the main colours you'll find is actually blue, but a very, very dark blue, and it's often referred to as midnight blue. So I'm going to do a wet on wet technique. So I've wet the top of my paper and now I'm going to start painting on my dark blue. Now, if you don't have a dark blue, you can always make it darker by mixing in some black. So I'm going to just pull this gradient kind of down a bit lower on the page. Okay, so what I'm going to do with my lid is I'm going to take that original dark blue and I'm going to add a little bit of black to it just to make it even darker. So I'm going to tap that along the top there. So this is going to be the darkest part of the sky. Okay, so this area that runs along the top here is the darkest part of our gradient. Okay, and then I'm going to come back to this original dark blue and put that underneath. So as we start to move down, the sky is going to get gradually lighter, and actually when it gets closer to the buildings there's almost a little bit of sunset left in the sky. Now, the trouble when you use a sunset on a midnight blue sky is any kind of combination of yellow and blue will turn your sky green, and we don't really want a green sky. We kind of want a sunset-y sky lower down. So the best way to make sure you don't turn your sky green is to dry the blue sky first. So once you've got a bit of a gradient on your page, where we've got this lower part of the sky where we're going to see a little bit of evidence of a sunset, I need to make sure I take out any wet blue pigment that I've got left, and it's just a case of dabbing it with a tissue. Okay, so let's just dab that. Okay, let's clean your brush. Now, a good tip here would be to change your water, because your water is going to have some blue pigment in it, but I'm just going to see if I can get the yellow with enough pigment so it doesn't go green. Kind of. Okay, so in fact, no, I'm going to change my water because otherwise I'll have a greeny yellow, and I don't want greeny yellow. So I've got myself some clean water. Just going to wipe that out of my lid so it doesn't get any kind of greenish tones to it. Clean my brush, and then I'm going to do this the proper way. So I've got my yellow, and my yellow is going to go along this edge here. Okay. And I'm going to soften up the edges, and I'll make this even more blended in a moment with a tissue. So let's just dab that. So I've just got a little hint of yellow. And then, along with the yellow in the sunset, there's a little bit of red. So I'm going to mix that in. And I'm going to, let's just do a bit of a wash down here. Okay. So that is my gradient from a midnight blue down to the last little bit of sky that's got a little bit of sunset in it. Let's just fill up that gap there. Okay, so that's step one. Now, down on the ground where Beegu's standing, it's just kind of a brownish colour, but I am going to try and do a gradient on this. So I'm going to just wet my paper. And I'm going to go straight to my palette and take some brown. And I'm just going to have my darker brown towards the edges here. And a darker brown kind of running along this kind of horizon line, and then the rest I'm just going to blend in with water. Okay, so there's my night sky to sunset gradient, and then there's my kind of pavement, I guess, gradient, so slightly darker at the edges. Right, now we're going to leave this to dry, because our next step is we're going to make the skyline of the city that's behind Beegu. So normally you wouldn't move your paint while it's drying, but I'm just going to do this so you can see the next step more clearly. So I've just cut up some pieces of paper. So I had some brown paper and I had some black paper. You can use any colour paper you like. On the book cover, the buildings are kind of brown and black behind Beegu, but yours don't have to be. You can do any style you like. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make sure I've got a variety of different rectangles, okay? Now, the way the buildings work on the front cover is these kind of black buildings are further in the background, and these brown buildings are closer to the foreground. So you could practice kind of setting them up, how they're going to go onto your page. Maybe think about which ones should go in the front and which ones should go behind. So maybe something like this, okay? And once you've got an idea of how your building is going to look, you then want to take a little bit of time to add some building details. So we're going to add some windows. Now, your windows can vary in size. They don't all have to be exactly the same shape and size. In fact, you can even have some buildings sideways like this. So I'm just going to look at the picture on the front cover. So I'm using the book as my source material. So you might want to have an image of the book somewhere while you're making these window shapes, just so you can see what the illustrator Alex Deacon did when he was creating the buildings. Okay. Now, when you colour in your windows, you'll take a bit more time over them. I'm doing mine a little bit rushed. Okay, let's see, what else have we got? Let's have another building. Some of the windows can just be like just lines. They don't even have to be coloured in squares. Okay, do some lines going this way now. Okay, let's do, so these are all different ways of representing windows. I'm not doing the same thing over and over. I'm trying to vary how I represent my windows, so maybe some dots. Let's just do 2 more. Let's alternate on this one. Okay, and then let's just have, I quite like doing the dots because they're quite fast. Okay, and then let's see, let's do one more. Let's just kind of do a knots and crosses. Right, so I've set my buildings up. Now, I didn't draw windows on these black ones, mainly because the pen wouldn't show up very well, and also the ones in the background, you wouldn't necessarily be able to see the window outlines. So I'm gonna bring my painting back. Now, this isn't dry, so my options are wait for it to dry, or I can try and take some of the moisture out with a tissue. Now, whenever you take moisture out, you also take some of the pigment out. The pigment just means the colour that's in the paint. So if you want to keep your pigment nice and bright, then you just have to leave it to dry. But if you want to speed things along, for example, I'm speeding mine along, then you might tap it with tissue. Now, my advice is, a bit like I showed at the start of this part of the tutorial, you probably want to just kind of lay your buildings out first, kind of get a feel for which ones should go in front, which ones should go behind. Remember these darker ones, we kind of want to go further back. So the further back are the ones that get glued first, just to confuse you. So the further away it is, you glue those ones down first. So let's put this one. Also, they look kind of cool if you overlap them. It makes them look more like they're in sequence, so they've got depth to the picture. So let's put this one here. Okay, that can go there. Now, if you find that you've got any gaps left, you might want to add some more buildings. It just looks good if you kind of fill up the space. So I think something like that will be perfect for the skyline behind Beegu. So this is the step that I'd like you to try and get done this week. And then next week, the plan will be to add the typography and to add the Beegu character in the foreground, and with a little autumn leaf blowing in for her to look at. Okay? Right. Thank you.